TMISI's modernized green screen application is very impressive. Now, we have a lot of customer stories on our website and screenshots of their applications, but seeing an application live really gives you a much better idea of what's possible with Presto, what's possible with refacing your green screen applications. While the application does have a very nice web GUI, which is very important because many people see green screens as dated, but I think more importantly, what you're going to see is how much new functionality was added and all the value that's added by that. It really highlights making the business case for refacing your green screens. If you're an IT manager, part of the project is really selling your decision makers on the value of modernizing, and you're going to get a great resources here to help you sell that internally as well. And I think equally as important is this project was done by TMISI's CEO, Evange Destounis, who is not a programmer. And this really highlights how easy of a tool Presto is to use. You know, regardless of your existing skill set, you can modernize quickly and with great results with Presto. So Evange is going to be our key presenter today. Again, he's the CEO and president of TMISI, an application service provider, commonly referred to as a SaaS, in the food distribution industry. He is a university graduate with a CPA designation and has held multiple positions such as CFO and COO with some of his larger clients. In his 26 years of experience, all of which have been on IBMI, he has been involved in the design and creation of multiple applications affecting hundreds of users, and he really understands his users' needs. My name is Marcel Serzen. I'm the Director of Marketing at BCD and Quadrant Software. I've been in the market, in the IBMI market, for 13 years, and I've filled many roles at BCD, including product manager, technical support manager, and trainer. I've spoken to hundreds of people looking for IBMI modernization and web solutions, and I've actually helped, when I was the trainer, hundreds of programmers, mostly RPG programmers, succeed with our web development tools. A little bit more information on BCD and Quadrant before we start. We are one company. We're the only vendor that offers you solutions in web application modernization, that's what you're going to see today, in mobile solutions, again, you'll see part of that today, as well as business intelligence with real-time web reports and dashboards, and document distribution, including spool file distribution, professional form overlays, and virtual faxing. BCD and Quadrant have been in the IBMI and mid-range market for over 60 years combined. We know the IBMI, and we really do speak your language. Now, the agenda we're following today, I'm going to spend just a few minutes before passing it to Evange just to give you a high-level overview of what Presto is. I'll then pass it to Evange, and he's going to show you his green screens and then the modernized versions of them with Presto. He'll be doing this all live. And then in the second half of the presentation, I'm going to give you a more technical description of how Presto works, including really focusing on the visual editor, which is the key part that Evange used to modernize his screens. Now, this webinar is recorded. You'll get a link to the recording tomorrow or on Monday. But again, please do not hesitate to ask questions at any point during this webinar. So what is Presto? Well, we created Presto in 2007. Well, that's when we released it. And since then, it's been used by hundreds of IBMI shops to modernize their existing green screens, as well as their new RPG programs to web pages. With Presto, you can give all of your green screens a web GUI. Right when you install Presto, which you can actually do in under 30 minutes, you can then go to a browser and navigate your entire system, looking at the screen here on your left in the browser version. Now, even though this is immediate and instant, you'll still want to test all your screens because technically this is not an emulator. It's on-the-fly transformation into web pages. At that first step there's no code changes required, no RPG or DDS changes, and you don't even need to identify your screens. Now, the second part of what you're seeing on your screen here is the endless possibilities. Adding all the bells and whistles, tabs, drop-downs, images, date pickers, charts. People do that using the visual editor in Presto, and they'll often do this to all of their most used screens. The visual editor is actually where Evange made a lot of his customizations as well. Now, what's very important, again, to a lot of people attending today's webinar is also mobile. So with Presto, you can also render the screens to mobile devices. I'll spend a few minutes on that at the end of the webinar today. Now with Presto, we actually have two approaches in Presto that you can choose, all from a single license. You can use the 5250 refacing approach. That's where Presto intercepts the 5250 data stream and renders it on the fly as HTML to the browser. You can also use RPG OA with Presto. We included a Presto OA handler, and that's just an alternative way to get data from an RPG program to the browser. And you can use both approaches within your applications, where you can have one screen that was modernized with OA and other ones that were done with 5250 refacing. It's really up to you. And again, there's no additional fee here. We're including both approaches within that single license of Presto. We do not price this separately. And really what's possible with either approach, what the end result is to the user, is actually very, very similar. And I'm going to spend a few more minutes on this at the end of today's webinar. What Evange will be showing you is he used the 5250 refacing approach for all of his current screens. With either approach that you use, your end users only need a browser, so it makes deployment easier. Basically, any popular browser can be used to access your Presto screens. Nothing needs to be installed. All they need is that browser. There's also no Windows servers. All we're using on the IBMI is we're using the Apache web server, and that's free with every IBMI. And you don't need to have any ActiveX, so there's nothing else on the PC that's needed besides the browser. So now I'm going to pass it over to Evange to show his application, and Evange is going to make you a presenter now. Okay, we can see your monitor, and if you just want to hit *6, and then you'll be unmuted.
Skills.
There we go. Sorry, Evange, we didn't hear you there. I just unmuted you, so you're all good to go now.
Okay, sorry, I hit *6, I guess, at the wrong time. All right, my name is Evange Destounis. As Marcel mentioned, I'm a CPA by education with very little programming skills. Although I have dabbled in some fairly extensive macro programming in Lotus. For those of you who have never heard of Lotus, it was a spreadsheet program in the 80s that competed against Excel and lost. With my programming team, we developed an application to manage inventory, sales, purchases, and other aspects of the distribution for a multitude of food distribution companies using RPG in the late 80s, early 90s. We integrated our application to an off-the-shelf accounting system comprised of GL, AP, and AR, which we purchased from Computer Associates written in COBOL. Although we have the source for the accounting software, we do not possess the COBOL language expertise to make any modifications, thus limiting our ability to improve that aspect of our final product, which consists of both the distribution software that we wrote in RPG and the accounting package, which was written in COBOL. With the objective of increasing user-friendliness offered by current GUI interfaces and shedding the notion our software was old and outdated, we started looking into modernizing it October of 2012. We looked at various approaches to modernizing, from rewriting the application in a modern language such as .NET to deploying strictly a refacing tool or possibly a combination of both. One of our objectives was to be in a situation to deploy a fairly modernized application within a year of starting the project, which basically eliminated the rewrite approach. As expected, our research was exhaustive and lasted 8 months with multiple webinars and demos, and this research led us to the conclusion that for our situation, namely not possessing COBOL expertise, refacing technology combined with RPG OA and a modern language in PHP was the best way forward. We evaluated products on the market, and the product offered by BCD checked all our boxes and brought the most value in achieving our modernization goal. We finalized the purchase of the software in June of 2013, but my programming team, which consists of 2 full-time programmers, were busy working on programming enhancements of our application. As the owner and CEO of the business, I was bothered by the fact we had invested in software which was not being used, not to mention we were not advancing our modernization project. So by October of 2013, I decided to take on the project myself and started working with the support staff at BCD, deploying Presto and some PHP templates on offer. Needless to say, with my limited programming skills, I got to know everyone in the support team at BCD pretty well, even to the point where I was invited to one of the techs' wedding. Just kidding. But that's how well I got to know these guys. So now I'll walk you through some of my green screens and how I modernize them. So let's start with the first one. Is everybody seeing this?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, so good. So this is where you land on when you log on. So you log on and you land on this initial menu, which obviously you have to put in an option number. The function keys of what you can do are here at the bottom. This is what it now looks like modernized. So what I did is I took the modern or the main menu from the green screen, and this became clickable straight out of the box. The function keys at the bottom got stripped and put up to the left. That was also straight out of the box. That's the skin I chose. I used the same kind of background as what you're going to see later on in some of the templates to give it that look that it's, it's the same or similar. We added the logo up here on the left, which looks nice, but also you'll see later on in my presentation it also serves a purpose. And then with the extra real estate, I dropped in a dashboard. So for distribution, the most important things are sales volumes, so what did the company do in the last 7 days, inventory levels, accounts payable levels, so here's accounts payable age with the total, accounts receivable levels, and cash collections or deposits. So that was, with the extra real estate, that's what I was able to do, and I think it's very, very beneficial for the executives that log on to our system. Now to show you how I make an invoice on the old versus the new. So here I would have to take 1 or 5, 1 for sales, 1 for customer orders. Then we go 5 to pick the customer. We have 6 to create a new order. So now we're in my RPG developed program. So you have some drop downs or some windows. Here now we're ready to pick the product. We could do a little bit of alpha searching. And basically, you pick the order and the order. So that's how we did it the old. Now let's take a look at how we do it with the new. So again, just mouse, clicking on it. Again, extra real estate, so I dropped in a couple of charts talking about fill rates, talking about number of cases sold. Here I'm talking about orders by location. Since I have the real estate, I might as well take advantage of it. Go into customer orders. This all now becomes clickable, so I can pick a client. Here up to the left, create a new order. Now these are drop downs, so very quick to access all the different warehouses that you can access. Here you can do a date picker field, brings up what date you're shipping something out. Now here, I added a new alpha search box. This alpha search box is an autocomplete. And as you're going to see, this will work in multi-languages. So here I'm spelling blueberries in French, and it'll search and return what it finds in the French or what it finds in the English, which for me, being located in Quebec, is a big benefit. Now I click on this, so it's all clickable. And now I can end the order. So that's how it is in the new. Okay. Now let's take a look at customer maintenance. So customer maintenance, 1. Now I'm in the world of Computer Associates and what I talked about in my intro. So this is written in COBOL. We have no access to change anything here. Go to 5, go to 1, customer maintenance, 1, customer master immediate update. And now I need to know what the customer number is. If I don't know what the customer number is, well, I'm out of luck, as they say. This brings up this menu, or this screen, which now I need to know a valid terms code. I need to know a valid salesman number. There's no drop downs here. There's no F4 list. There's nothing. I need to know a valid sector of business. If we advance, now we're into my RPG screen, because obviously the master file of Computer Associates didn't give us enough information, so we needed to add. So we created our own screen. So here now I have potentially F4 lists. So let's say for salesperson. See, so now I'm getting a little bit of a better look and feel. but still very text-driven. If I have to put in an email, everything has to be typed out. Now let's take a look at it in the modern application. So here I cleaned up the screen, so I got rid of options that I don't need because we don't use. Accounts receivable, customer maintenance, immediate update. And now I have an autocomplete. So here I could either type out the name of the customer if I'm looking for a customer, or if I'm an advanced green screen user and I know the number, I could just go ahead and type it out like I did in the other screen. So I'm not slowing anybody down that wants to put in the number, but I'm offering a lot of value to somebody who might be new to the company and doesn't actually know the customer numbers. Here we hit change. Now, terms codes, for example. See, it's a drop-down. No need to memorize valid codes. Here I've changed what I called it. Sorry about that. I changed to put SP for salesperson. So now it's a drop-down. I changed opt 5 to put it as the sector, and it's a drop-down. Another very good thing, which is phenomenal, is I incorporated this help video YouTube button. By hitting this button, it opens up another YouTube video that I've actually created that talks about exactly how to set up the customer, what all these fields mean, and how to fill them out, which I find is value add. Let's go to the local. Now, from the previous screen, the currency, salesman number, through JavaScript is brought into this screen upon creating a customer, and it populates it. In the old green screen environment, you would put salesman number 2 in the previous screen, and if you forgot and put 03, it would give you an error message saying these two don't match. With the extra real estate, I dropped in a map, so basically it just shows visually where somebody is located. Again, drop down for warehouse, radio buttons to answer questions that were before, cryptic with 1s and 2s. Let's submit. Now, if I go in and I want to put in an email, I could type it out, and similar to Outlook, again, looking at the address book and looking at the log of every email ever sent out, brings it back. So it makes data entry a lot easier, a lot quicker, and more accurate. Okay. Now, up here to the upper left-hand corner, this is a navigation. Now, this navigation was offered to us by Computer Associates, and people have to type out valid things. Like, for example, if I wanted to go to AP menu, get rid of that, and that would bring me to the accounts payable menu. Or if I know I want to go to AR menu 6, well, it would bring me automatically to AR menu 6. What I did is I created that as a drop-down. So now people don't have to memorize what they put in. They see the menu option, and they even see a little description of what that option is. I mean, AR menu 6 is inquiry. So with my drop-down, I turned it into an inquiry, so you know where you're going. You don't have to memorize it. And at the same time, it's easy. Like I said with the logo, very big benefit. If you look at the green screen, in this green screen, there's no notion of what company I'm in. Now, I run, as a software as a service, I run a multitude of companies use my software. And some users actually have access to one or more companies because these companies are affiliated. In the green screen, there's no way of knowing what company you're in. But in modernization with this logo changes out as I change environments from one company to another. So now let's see how automatic filling of fields is helping us out. So let's go do a period end in accounts receivable. I don't remember what it is, so I'll just put AR menu, 5, 3, and now we go and we add. So now I have this screen. Again, we're in the COBOL world, so there's not much I can do. The very little that we were able to do was we actually brought in a couple of these descriptions on the right to help a user fill this out. So let's say I'm closing as of today, 25/09/14, and let's say today is period 10/14. This has to be a star. I have to type out final. I have to type out a P and a 10, let's say. This is a 3, and I have to put a 10 and a 14. So from this whole screen, only one thing came in as a default, which was the 3. Press enter. Already made an error. Excellent. There we go. So exit out. Let's go now and look at the same thing in modernization. So period end, option 3. Let's delete the records I just put in. Add. And as you can see now, everything is filled out. I got the date filled out automatically. If not, I can use a date picker to do it. It read, using an SQL statement or a drop-down using SQL, it read the current accounting period. So this is the period that needs to be closed. It automatically fed the asterisk on the radio button conversion that I did. It automatically fed, the pick final from this radio button conversion. All I have to do is pick this. And this actually, in the next near future, I'm going to be doing some code that's going to feed this as well based on this. But anyways, the 3 is already fed, and it feeds the 1214 automatically. So now we press enter, exit. Now, in the old system, once you would run the update, the CL program would intercept the answers to these questions over here, and it would check if you had any errors. Like, for example, if you were trying to close a period that isn't the current period, then the CL program would send a report telling you have errors. You have to come back, re-enter or change those errors, and then rerun the job. With modernization, if I take 4 to run it, I know I'm not going to have any errors, and therefore the CL program will still try to intercept the job, but it won't need to because there won't be any errors. So that's how modernization here helped us out in terms of pre-filling fields and reducing errors. Okay, so now let's take a look at the dashboard. So this dashboard, on top of everything else, I incorporated these little macro buttons. So if you take a look at this little macro button, it says information, but if you were to click on it, it'll take you straight to the accounts receivable aging. Here I can pick a customer. Here I can pick an invoice. Brings me to the invoice, all with my mouse, all clicking with no issues. Now let's take a look at the same thing in green screen. So I would have to do 5, I would have to do 9, I would have to do 8. That brings up this screen. Here I would have to type out. Here I would have to type out. And this is to do the same thing that you saw on the modernization. Okay, now let's go over and show you a little bit about the mobile. Now, the beautiful thing about what Marcel was saying is this runs on a web page or on a browser. So it runs on any browser available anywhere, on your phone, on your iPad. Now, you can create specific versions of a program depending on where you're coming in from. I chose not to. I chose to bring the whole application down to the iPad. So if you take a look at this, if you go across, you see the same charts. These charts are animated. If you go down. So for me, any aspect of it, anything that the application does is available on the iPad. I introduced some buttons over here, system attention, which is basically the escape button, because I don't think Macs even know that that button exists. Page up and page down, which makes it easy for them to move up and down. But if we hit the system attention, that brings up our little utility menu. And then if we hit work with submitted jobs, and I'm sure IBMI users are familiar with this screen. Here now I've incorporated the flyout, which again, this is automatic, straight out of the box. So this allows me to pick and work with this job. So this is phenomenal, because imagine how many little icons you would need to go across the left to tell the user to either click on one to do a send or to change, hold, delete. So I think this is really neat, this flyout menu that BCD has come up with. So this is basically how it looks on the iPad. And it works exactly the same way as it works anywhere else. Okay, finally, I want to show you what I did with PHP. So we created, so let's go back into Computer Associates. We needed to create an inquiry screen for, just close down, for our accounts receivable batches. So instead of creating an inquiry screen using RPG and accessing the file in Computer Associates, I chose to create it using the PHP templates on offer by the tool. And I'll show you why and explain why. So if I hit AR batch inquiry, this basically launches an SQL to my file to bring whatever it is that I'm looking for. So these are all different filters. I can filter this by period. So I want to look at period 11. I just hit the filter button. And then these totals up here change. The amount of the remits, the deductions, the amount of the discounts. I can also, if I'm looking at a particular, say if I'm looking at A01 for period 12, filter that in. So this is for this particular batch and what the total is. So this I find, this also has the clickable columns. So let me just get a little bit more data. This is all straight out of the box using that template. So if I click on batch number, it'll sort it by batch number, either up or down. If I do the batch date, same thing. Customer numbers, all these columns are sortable. They all come based on the template of what you deploy to execute this. Now the beauty about this also is I can, for example, filter like I did before, let's say 801, and then I incorporated this output to Excel button. Click on that button. That basically opens up this spreadsheet down here. Say yes. And then here's all the records, same records that you see here are now in Excel where I can manipulate them, add them, total them, do whatever it is that I'd like to do with them. See the same type of weave here in the background and the same kind of colors? That's what we ended up matching our skin to, using this kind of weave, using those kind of colors, so that people don't feel like when they come here or they go there that they're completely exiting one application and entering into a completely different application. So that's about it in terms of showing you a little bit of what I've done. In conclusion, what I'd like to say about Presto in terms of what I like about it, and what I like about it is the ability to add JavaScript to all the different pages, and that basically means for me that I can modernize to the limit of my imagination rather than modernizing to the limit of a tool. I like the support that I got from BCD. I mean, obviously, excellent support. They gave me a lot of sample JavaScript, which I then took and re-engineered and copied and modified onto hundreds of screens. I mean, I've been doing this for hundreds of screens. And in the future, our plans are to incorporate RPGOA and get some of that clickable, sortable columns without having to redo the logic. So that's what we're planning to do in the future. And any new requests that come up, we're going to probably be doing that kind of stuff using PHP. So if there's any new logic requests, we'll probably execute those using PHP. So that's about it. If there's anything else, Marcel, that I missed,
no, that's great, Evange. People can start asking Evange questions if they want through the window, and we'll start answering them in about 20 minutes. I'm just going to make myself the presenter again. Okay, so everybody should be seeing my screen in 1 second. And there we go. So you should be seeing this. Now, we have a mixed audience today. We have some people here that need to see what's possible with Presto, what they can do with it. Like Evange said, modernize to your imagination, and sometimes we need to help people with that. And we have other people watching this webinar where they want to get into the nitty-gritty. How do I do that? How did Evange do this? So what I'm going to do is show you all the key features within Presto that Evange used to do a lot of his customizations. I'll be doing it over our demo application. Now, in terms of how Presto works, really there's 3 levels of modernization within Presto. There's what you get out of the box without doing anything. There's level 2, which is really using the visual editor and adding the drop-downs and the charts. And then there's level 3, which is really using other technologies. Evange mentioned our WebSmart PHP. So that's a separately licensed product, but some people are integrating their Presto screens with applications like PHP or .NET. What we're seeing really is a mixture of what people do. So most people's applications is a combination of these 3, where they might have 80% of their screens out of the box. 15% is more really visual, editor, customized, and then a very small subset of integrating it with other technologies out there. So I'm going to start off with showing you out of the box what you get right when you install Presto. And what I'm going to be doing is really showing you the 5250 approach, which requires no changes to your code. And it can be, like Evange said, he has COBOL and RPG, and it can be any version of RPG. So your starting point is by selecting an existing skin. We shipped 3 skins. Evange picked the one on the right, which is called Cascadia. And then that's your default look, which, again, he showed you that you can fully customize by putting your logo in. So let's take a look at this in real time. I'm not going to show you the green screen because Evange showed you that when you're using Presto, it doesn't actually affect your underlying green screens. So when I log in here, and again, this is right what you get right when you install Presto, which can be done in pretty much under 30 minutes. You get instant browser access to your screens with, as Evange said, again, the clickable menus, all your function keys on the side. Just going to go into one of our menu screens. And then the flyout menus like this, again, we automatically detect your subfile options up here and put them in a menu for you. So this is what you get without having to do anything. All of your window lookups will work. We have excellent, excellent window detection. I'm using my mouse right now. Some people prefer to use the keyboard. You can do either of those. Again, your program is going to essentially work out of the box just like your green screen did, but with a bunch of added customization such as clickable links and menus. Now, keeping in mind with the 5250 approach, you don't need the source. So it also automatically modernizes all of your system screens like Work Active Job. And we've got a really nice utility that we include in Presto to view spool files. So this is all included for free here with Presto. And you can see your list of spool files. You can click on one and opens it up and it converts it to a PDF. If you're wondering how I did that, I actually hit Control-Alt-P on my keyboard, but you can also, as you'll see when I get to the customized screens, you can also do that as a button on any screens that you want or on every single screen by doing it as a global rule. Now just jumping back to the PowerPoint for a second. So when you see stories from our customers about, I modernized 2,000 screens within hours, these are our customers that are pretty much doing exclusively out-of-the-box modernization. We have stories on our website about that. The one thing that I highly recommend that people do, even when they're just doing out-of-the-box, and this is what we recommend as a starting point with Presto, is really look at what you can do at a global level. So, for example, in this case here, sorry, I'm just going to go back, is this page up and page down. Though transforming that into buttons is not automatic in Presto. We can't always know what people are going to use for their text there. You know, a lot of this is based on pattern recognition. But you can do that at a global level through some custom JavaScript. And we have examples on how to do many of these things. Other examples I've seen is if everybody has an F5 refresh on every single screen, or an F12 or an F3 on every single screen, they'll put a few icons up in the header part. They'll make that as part of the skin that you use within Presto so that it automatically appears on every screen without having to touch those screens. Lots of flexibility here on what you can do with global rules. Now, in terms of level 2, again, this is what you're going to spend your time on. This is where Evange spent quite a bit of time on his key screens, and this is where you get the real value add, is adding all the bells and whistles to your screens. So the way you can do customizations, and before I do that, I'm just going to do the first poll of the day, is how much, you should see the question now, how much web experience do you have? Do you have lots of experience, some experience, or very little to none? Okay, I'll just give that about 5 more seconds. Okay, great. 80% of you just voted, so we appreciate the participation. And I'm going to, oops, I just clicked on the wrong button there by accident. And I'm going to share it now with you. So you should see the results. So 16% lots of web experience, half of you some, and 35% very little to none. So Evange would have fallen into this last category in terms of web development, whether that be HTML, CSS, or JavaScript knowledge. The reality is most of our customers fall into that bottom bracket. For anybody with the some to lots, you'll just have a better understanding of Presto as you jump into it. Now, when we look at what's possible in terms of customizing the screens, I'm going to go hide the results now, is you can do customizations at a few different levels. You can customize the skins. At that level, if you're changing logos and colors, you're going to be into the HTML and the CSS a little bit. The visual editor, which doesn't require web skills. The SQL queries is very powerful. I'll be showing how to do drop-downs and charts on that. We're going to take a look at RPGOA for a few minutes as well. And this last bullet here, I'm not going to spend any more time on it, but you also have in Presto access to the HTML code. Now, I'd say the majority of our customers don't go and customize the HTML. They use the visual editor. But for those of you with lots of web experience, you may prefer to have full control over the HTML. And you may want to go into there. So that option is there. Again, it is an option. But I know we have we have a consulting team of 15 full-time consultants that use our products and provide services for our customers. And they're very experienced web developers. They love going into the HTML code. But again, most of our clients like Evange just went and used the visual editor. So your starting point is the skin. You can customize these however you want, putting different headers, different colors, different logos. That level of change, as I said, is usually in the HTML, the CSS, at the skin level. Now, when working with the tool itself, I'm going to bring up the WebSmart Designer now. So your end users only need a browser to access the screens that you customize and the out-of-the-box experience. But you, as the person who will be customizing the screens, will be using the Windows-based Presto Designer. And the way this works is we've got a browser running right in the Designer. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to my screens. And I'm going to go and call up the customized version of the screens I just showed you from the out-of-the-box. So instead of having links, we change these into buttons. And that's actually a page option. You can click on your page options up here to use buttons instead of links. The other thing is, let's say we go to work with customers here. You know, you can change these icons. We have a little bit of JavaScript code that will convert these, and you just choose which icon you want to select for that. Or you can do things like putting tabs, date pickers, Google Maps, as Evange showed you. Now, the way all this stuff happens is going into the visual editor. And I'm actually going to pick a different screen to go right into the details with you on how the visual editor works. So I'm going to go back to work with items. I'm going to go to this screen here, which has actually quite a few customizations. So I'll show you how we did all of these customizations, from the image to the drop-down box based over top of a database file, all the way to the autocomplete, which I think Evange has some really, really good examples of, even multilingual ones. So as I type, it gives me a list of things that match that criteria. So the way this works is you go into the visual editor, click on the tab there. So you have full control to move any elements around. You can delete these elements. And then we have what's called the palette. So the palette is all the, what we call elements, the UI elements that you can drag onto your screen, such as buttons, tabs. In this case, it's an image right here that we added on. You also have different types of containers, which will do things like you see here. So if we go and look at the image, so how was that added? We added the image from the palette onto the screen. Then we go to the element properties. And we put in the field settings. We put in for the source. This is the location on the IFS of where the images exist. And what's really neat is when you look at this, you'll see that there's a screen location. So it's dynamically putting the image name on the path. You would do the same type of process if you want to maybe link to a PDF or link to a spreadsheet, which you can also do. And the way that that is done is, I'm just going to pin the element properties here for a second, and I'm going to bring up, so you can actually access the green screen view, the underlying green screen view within the Presto Designer. And you can actually highlight information like this, and you can actually drag it into the properties so that at runtime, that whatever information appears here will be used to dynamically build that path, whether it's an image again or a PDF. Now, some of the other elements that we'll see is the drop-down box. So with the drop-down box, and again, go to the properties. You can see all the different types, again, of elements that you can choose, but we're doing the drop-down list. And this is where the SQL query. So you can create a drop-down box over top of a static list of values that you type into the properties here. What most people are doing, though, is they're using the SQL query tool within Presto, where you can define SQL queries to populate UI elements like the drop-down box. Now, there's just an SQL statement that's typed out. You can share that SQL statement within different elements within Presto. And just like I showed you that you can use screen values to dynamically build an image path, you can do the same thing to dynamically build the SQL query by having, a where clause with parameters. Let's say you're basing something on the item number. So the item number can be the dynamic parameter here. Now, when we do things also, such as an autocomplete, again, the element type is autocomplete, also using an SQL query, just like we did in the drop-down, this time over top of a different field. And the thing that's interesting here is the min length. So this just means at what point do we trigger the autocomplete? And in this case, because it's a small list of values, we did it on the first character. When you type in E, you see the list of possible values. If people tend to know the first few characters, you might want to set that to 3, because each time you type, it's doing a hit to your system. It's doing an SQL query to provide that list of values. Now, what I really like about what Evange has done with his application is it's clear that he understands who his users are. Sometimes he must have people that are very familiar with the green screen, so he wants to leave certain things in place that they were used to, but also offer alternatives like autocompletes for people who prefer the web environment or might not know the values they're entering as much as the green screen people. So you can do both of those things. Some of the things to be aware of is you don't always want to do a drop-down box, because sometimes people find that slows them down, whereas sometimes an autocomplete is a better option for that. Now I'm going to go, again, the other way you can change elements, you could also click, let's just pretend that this is a date field. You can right-click and transform the element. And let's say, for example, if I wanted to transform it to a date picker, I could have done it that way. Or I can export data to a spreadsheet. So there's many different UI elements there. Now I'm going to exit out of this screen. I'm not going to save the changes. And I'm going to go look at the smart charts. Evange had great examples of doing dashboards. And the way that's done, again, I'm going to click on the Visual Editor tab. I'll click on this element. I'll bring up the element property. So again, if you didn't have one on the screen, you go to Palette, you go to Smart Charts down here, and you would just drag one onto the screen. This one's already created, so I'm just going to go to the properties. Again, it's using an SQL query to build that. And then you have the chart types, and in this case, it's a bar 2D. And you have a lot of other options on what type of chart you want to create. I think Evange had a lot of pie charts and bar charts as well. So that's how you create all that type of stuff. Now, Evange mentioned he did a macro so that when you click on it, you can jump 5 screens deep. The way the macro works is you use these icons up here, and you can actually record a sequence of keystrokes that you take. So let's say you do a 1 and then a 5 and then an 8. However you get to that screen that's 5 screens deep, you record that process, and then you attach that. Actually, I'll go back to the Visual Editor here for a second, because you can attach that as a JavaScript element. So you have different elements such as on-click. And you can say, run this macro when I click on this, which jumps you to that screen. So Evange also mentioned he did quite a bit of JavaScript. So there's 2 places you can do JavaScript. You have all the JavaScript events here. Okay, on click, on blur, on change, and trigger different events. If you change a field, you might want to change the value in a different field. Or if you have a drop-down, you want to update the drop-down in the second drop-down as well. Now, there's one other spot that you can add JavaScript, so that's at the element level. You can also add JavaScript at the page level, and that's where you go here and go to JavaScript and click Edit here, or click Add if you don't have any, and add it there. Now, one thing to be aware of is, again, you don't need to know JavaScript to get the out-of-the-box results we showed, or to add these elements I'm showing you. But JavaScript is really the key technology of adding even more value, of triggering certain types of validation, pre-populating values, and then again triggering events to other fields is done that way. We give you full control in Presto on how you can use JavaScript, all from within the designer. And these are things that most beginners aren't even thinking of, or they're not even evaluating in tools. It usually comes further down the road, but always be aware that it is an important part of web development. Now on this screen, what you're going to also see now is I've got OA applications. So I've been showing you 5250 refaced applications up to this point. If I click on the Work with Customers, this is an RPG OA or RPG Open Access web-enabled application with Presto. I just took an option 2, and if you notice, it's really the same design we're using. You can't tell from an end user on these screens which approach we used. One of the things that's neat about RPGOA is it knows the field type. So if you have a date field, you can automatically have Presto at a global level attach date pickers to all your input-capable date fields. Actually, that's done automatically for you using the OA approach. Now, another thing, I'll show you one more OA example here. Again, these are seamlessly intermingled with the refacing screens. If I click on this work with items, what's the first thing you notice here? It's probably the fact that there's so many records on the screen. You would never get that on a green screen. And this, to me, is really the key advantage or the key benefit of OA, or what it gives you above what you can do with refacing, is you can grab more records and display them all in a scrollable grid that has sortable columns, and those columns can actually even be moved by the user, and they can resort it. That grid component, when you use OA, it's automatically done for you with the grid and the moving of these fields and everything. The one thing that you have to be aware of is your RPG program must be coded in a way that's doing a load all subfile so that it retrieves all the records for you when using RPG Open Access. Now, returning to the PowerPoint here, I'm just going to give you a very high-level overview of the difference between 5250 and OA, because it's important that you realize this. And again, you could use either approach, but the 5250 refacing, what we're doing is, Presto is doing is intercepting the data stream and then rendering it on the fly to the browser. That same data stream can be used for the emulator, and we're not touching this part. This is not affected in any way. That's why you get those immediate results, because it's on the fly. Now, when we use open access, technically there is a display file involved, but really what we're doing is we created an OA handler ourselves. And it's just a different way to pass data from an RPG program to the browser. And it's actually populating a data structure. This is all kind of technical, but it's populating a data structure with an array with all the key information or all the fields that then Presto can handle, and then you can design your screens based on that. And again, the end results are basically very, very similar. The difference being able to do that grid with OA. Now, there are some requirements with OA. Okay, you do need the source code. You do have to add this one line of code, which is the Presto handler. You do have to be using RPG4 or RPG ILE to make use of RPG OA. If you want to keep using the green screen, you do have to conditionally compile your program, and you'll end up with two objects, one for the green screen, one for the web GUI. With the refacing approach, you don't need to do that because it's always using that same data stream. The grid does need to be a load all subfile as well. So here's the next polling questions here. Which approach, knowing what you know now, would you take for your existing green screens? For the majority of them, let's just call this, for the majority of my green screens that are existing, would you use an OA approach or would you use a 5250? Okay, I'm just going to leave this open for a few more seconds. Okay, I'll go ahead and share the results with you there. So this is what we expect. There's about 76% of you that say 5250. I think most people, for the majority of their screens, that is what they're going to use. Now I'm going to do a back-to-back polling question here, almost ask a slightly different one. Which approach do you see yourself using for new RPG programs? Keep in mind that you can use the refacing or the OA approach for new RPG development, where maybe you're only using the display file as a way to pass the information to the browser through the Presto OA handler. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll, share the results with you. And this is more of a split, and this is what we are expecting for that new development. Again, both options have benefits, and then again with the OA you have the grid approach. So that's good to see. Now in terms of the third level of modernization, again, not that many people hit this level of modernization. This is taking other web technologies. Evange showed you an example of linking to a WebSmart PHP application. Again, that's a product that's sold separately, but it's an alternative approach to doing new development, if you want to do a PHP approach. Again, you do not need WebSmart PHP. You do not need PHP in any way to use Presto. You can also do things like web services, credit card validation, all that type of stuff with Presto. We also offer a portal if you want to have, sometimes people want to replace their existing menuing system from the green screen. So in some cases, you can do that with our portal. But what's nice about the portal is you can put other information, documents, PDFs, spreadsheets, all accessible from the same place. When you registered for this webinar, we asked you how important is mobile to you for green screen web enablement, and 67% of you said it's important to critical. Only 33% of you basically had no plans for mobile. With Presto, again, you have the 3 levels of modernization. You have the out-of-the-box, so we ship mobile-optimized CSS files, as well as a virtual keyboard for your function keys, because, of course, on Apple devices, you don't have function keys. You can use the visual editor to modernize your screens. And you can also use jQuery Mobile, which is one of the most popular JavaScript libraries for doing mobile UIs. At this level here, you're actually going to be in the HTML code, but I had very little experience with jQuery Mobile, and I created the screen here in about 15 minutes after seeing an example from one of our developers. But it just gives you that much more of a mobile-optimized look. Everything you do in Presto for mobile is really a web application. You can access it from any device. For those of you who want to make use of things like a barcode scanner, you can do what's called a hybrid, and that wraps it in a native container. You would use a technology, a free technology like PhoneGap to do that with Presto. And you could do things like using the camera on the device to do barcode scanning. So I'm just going to wrap up here in terms of what's available to you. Well, we have an amazing resources for you. We have outstanding technical support. As Evange said, I don't think we've invited anybody to a wedding yet, but we do develop close relationships with our customers. You get somebody on the phone who can answer your question. We have lots of examples, lots of knowledge-based articles, great user guides, excellent online training, recorded videos, online, on-site training. We also offer professional services for those of you who don't have the time that might want to take it to that 3rd level or even that 2nd level. A lot of people are talking about like 100 screens that they might want to customize. So what you saw today was a great example of a real live application by Evange at TMISI that really shows what's possible, and what's possible by somebody that didn't have any prior web development experience. And you also saw that Presto can web enable all of your green screens. You don't need to make any source code changes if you're using the refacing approach, but we do offer both approaches, the OA and the 5250 from a single license. And of course, we have mobile support and an excellent visual editor. You can visit the URL down there, TMISI. We actually have a 3-minute video on Evange's application down there. You can request a free trial from that site as well. So we're going to open up the question period now. We've got 5 minutes. Actually, Evange, the first question's for you, so I'm going to unmute you here. Let's see if you can get back on the audio. And this question's from Ron. He said, how long did it take you to feel comfortable with Presto?
How long did it take me to feel comfortable with Presto? I'd say about a few weeks. Let's say, call it 3 to 4 weeks.
Excellent. We got just a comment more about doing graphics. I think maybe that meant by charts. I would do that in PHP and not an RPG. And this is all people's choices. If you want to do any new development, any future development, whether you want to use Presto and develop them that way, the technical difference, and again, this is getting quite technical, but you're creating a stateful application when you're doing your traditional RPG development. What's great about Presto is you just use all of your existing RPG coding skills or COBOL, all your existing traditional input-output functions. But it's a stateful application, which is usually completely fine for internal applications. When you start doing things like B2B shopping carts and you want people to bookmark things, you want to do SEO, you'll start looking more at stateless web development, which you can do with RPG CGI, with our WebSmart product, or you can do with PHP, again with our WebSmart product. So we do offer those options. This is from John. How was your response time running SQL queries? From my experience, they run extremely fast. Evange, if you want to maybe comment on that in terms of your autocompletes. I mean, you showed it live.
Yeah, they're instantaneous. I mean, there's absolutely very little time lag.
Mm-hmm. And we've done so much stuff in terms of improving performance in Presto over the last 5 or 6 years, from how we use Ajax, handling certain things on the server side, and the response time is excellent. Here's a question from Bjorn. Was the Excel transfer part of Presto? So I'll answer this first, Evange. In Presto, you have the option to do a data export in Excel, and you would use the SQL query to do that. And in Evange's example, maybe I'll just let you explain what you did in your example, Evange.
Well, what I did is when we decided to go down the road of using BCD, we bought a lot of their different tools. So one of the tools that I have is Clover. Marcel didn't talk about it, but it's a very nice piece of software. And in my PHP, when I press that output button, it basically runs a Clover program that does the same filtering as what the user put in and generates the Excel spreadsheet.
Here's a great question from Ron. What has the user response been to the GUI version of their apps? It looks great, but sometimes people don't like change. So I'll give that one to you, Evange, to start off, and then I'll fill in on that as well.
Well, my experience with it is it's exactly he's exactly right. It's difficult. People are especially my more advanced green screen users, were very hesitant to change. But once they started to change and once they started to see some of the value add, especially in the accounting software, I have users now that are strictly browser users and have ditched the green screens completely. I have other users that do some things on the green screen and do other things on the browser, which I find is another very huge benefit with Presto, is that you can run both of them at the same time. So users that like to do certain things that are, again, advanced, experienced users that like to do certain things on the green screen, well, they're free to do so. This isn't a, either one or the other type of a scenario.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one of the key things, too, and I think Evange would agree with this, is it's very important in any project, really, to get your end users involved early. Like I said, one of the examples we had is a customer who put a whole bunch of drop-down boxes, and it slowed their green screen users down, and they didn't like it. But then when they got more feedback, they changed them to autocompletes instead. If you can get those end users involved early on in the project, help you decide on this, get them a part of it, it's a key factor to the success of your project.
Exactly. I made that mistake as well, so I learned from that mistake.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, we had a question about our services as well, is we do have quite a few customers using our professional services. Again, when you're getting to that point where you really want to add the bells and whistles, and a lot of people are busy, that's what we hear the most often is, I'm a one-person IT shop. I don't have the time, even though I get the out-of-the-box results, I want to take it further, but I just don't have the resources to do that. We've got 15 full-time people ready to do that for you, and we do it extremely quickly, and the results are extremely impressive. And we have quite a few stories on our website as well, on our services team website. Here's a question from Sheila. Will the RPG programs be called by a CGI program? If so, what user ID will they use? I might not have been clear on that. When you're using Presto, it's just like the green screen. When somebody's signing in, it's their user profile. It's running under their user profile. It's using their authorities, what authorities they have to which objects. At that level, it's no different. What you might want to do, well, not what you might, what you do want to do, especially if you're providing access outside your firewall, is you want to do SSL so that it can encrypt some of the encrypt the data when it's in transfer. So you definitely want to do that. So we've hit the exactly at the top of the hour here. So I'd like to thank Evange for showing us a great demonstration of his application, which is extremely impressive. And I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to attend. We had lots of great questions. And again, don't hesitate to visit that URL and download a free trial or contact us. As you leave the webinar, there's a survey that's going to pop up. We'd really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to tell us how we did and to see if you have any questions. Thanks very much, everyone, and have a great day.
No problem.